welcome to this next installment of videos coming out of the release of the 2020 MADD South Carolina Court Monitoring Report called Refusal to Change. My name is Stephen Burt, Executive Director for MADD South Carolina. In this one, we want to focus on the recommendation and focus area that we call Get It Right the First Time, or being tough on first-time DUI offenders. Now, part of the reason we say this is probably obvious, but really needs to be talked about anyways. So if we go soft on first-time DUI offenders, we know that there's a higher likelihood that if they don't face the real smart penalties that they should, that they may do it again, and perhaps and again. And there's, while it is difficult and heartbreaking for us to serve and support every family that's been impacted by a DUI crash, often, sometimes obviously losing someone special, it's even worse when we then come to find out that this person has multiple DUI arrests in their past. Maybe some are convictions, maybe some are pled down to reckless driving, but it just enhances the fact that the system has failed when we don't get tough on the first ones that hopefully prevent the second or any of that subsequent negative behavior. So obviously that's part of the reason why we need to get tough on DUI and get it right the first time. But also there's some conversations we had with some of our local prosecutors when we went around having these local meetings in preparation for releasing this report. They talked about some things that we really hadn't talked about before. And that was when you have somebody come back through the system for their second DUI arrest, if they got off easy the first time, they come back even more slick, even more jaded, more expecting that they're going to get out of their second one, even more so than they did the first time. So now they've probably met with an attorney before and almost gotten a tutorial of what to do to get out of your charges. They come in expecting, since I got a reckless driving plea that last time, well, certainly I'm going to get one this time as well. And they find, the prosecutors find it even harder to hold them accountable and to get them to plead to guilty, perhaps even if they're, it's a strong case. Sometimes they'll still won't plead guilty because they think they're going to get out of it because they have before. So that's another reason we need to get it right. Now, one of the things in South Carolina we think is the best way to get it right the first time is to pass a law that says everyone convicted of a DUI is going to have an ignition interlock device on their car for some period of time. Ignition interlock devices are these in-car breathalyzers that people have to blow into, and if they have any detectable level of alcohol, the car won't start. In South Carolina, we call our law Emma's Law, named after Emma Longstreet, who was killed on New Year's Day 2012 going to church with her family by a drunk driver who had prior offenses. And if they had had this device on their car, maybe the Longstreet family could have avoided that tragedy they suffered that day. Now, Emma's Law, while it's a good thing, unfortunately, was the strongest version of the bill we could get passed at the time in 2014, but it only requires interlock devices for repeat offenders and first-time offenders if their BAC is 0.15 or higher. We believe it should be simply all offenders. 34 other states have done this. They've had impressive overall reductions in DUI fatalities. We certainly need that in South Carolina. So we will continue to push for that as our #1 priority in 2021, as the bill unfortunately lost its chance to pass when COVID pretty much ended the legislative session in 2020. The other thing that we think is important, and something new that came up in conversations in just this past year, is the idea that judges should be made aware that even if they're convicting someone, if they're sentencing someone for a first-time DUI conviction, they should be made aware if in the past that person had DUI arrests that ended as reckless driving convictions. Because if you've looked at our MADD South Carolina data that we have in this report, we know that for 6 of the 7 counties where we monitored, less than half the people who are arrested get convicted for DUI. And the majority of those who are not convicted, it's because they got pled down to reckless driving. So they are convicted of something, but not DUI like they should have. We know from talking to prosecutors that if someone has a reckless driving charge on their record in this state, it almost always started as a DUI charge that was pled down to reckless. So when we have people who are finally getting convicted of a first DUI and we see they have prior reckless drivings, we know that probably this is not their first DUI arrest. And again, probably not their first DUI. They just happen to get out of their first one. So we think that either judges should take it upon themselves to seek the most information possible so that they can know if somebody they're sentencing has had a previous DUI arrest pled down to reckless driving, or we should make it clear in statute that that is both something they could and should have access to in that information. So they may still only be convicted, sentenced for a first offense DUI, but at least that judge can give them the maximum per se, or a higher than the minimum, knowing that this is not really the first time that they committed this crime. Those are just a couple of the recommendations that we think would help South Carolina get it right the first time on DUIs and hopefully prevent these tragedies which come around when people keep repeating the same behavior over and over again, and sometimes end up with another family that reaches out for MADD support, which we would love to see not happen. Thanks for checking out our recommendation number 3 on getting it right the first time, and we hope you'll check out the rest of our videos as well related to this very important work we're doing with court monitoring in South Carolina. Thank you.